Welcome to the Directorate of Restrictive Business Practices at the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. I am Patrick Chengo, the Director responsible for the Restrictive Business Practices Directorate. What do we do in the Directorate? Basically, we investigate matters related to cartel conduct. We also deal with matters that relate to application for exemptions, as well as notification of agreements, specifically agreements that have restrictive clauses in nature. I will speak briefly on each facet of what I have mentioned. We are largely, as a directorate, mandated to be able to deal with Part 3 of the Competition and Consumer Protection Act number 24 of 2010 as amended by Act number 21 of 2023. In ensuring that we deal with matters falling under Part 3 of the law, which is basically the restrictive business practices and anti-competitive trade practices, we look at provisions specific to Part 3, such as Section 8, which deals with agreements and other concerted practices that may be by associations or enterprises. And we also have to look at Part 9, which deals with horizontal agreements, which are prohibited per se. And prohibited per se meaning that in their nature, there's no justification for anyone or any business entity out there to engage in such a conduct. We also have to deal with Section 10, which basically are vertical agreements, and these would pertain largely to retail price maintenance elements. I must mention also that we have to be able to sensitize the public out there in terms of what would form issues related to restrictive business practices and the nature thereof. So under Section 8, I did mention matters related to agreements. Not all agreements are prohibited under the law. Others may be restrictive, and so if they are restrictive, parties may then apply under Section 14 of the Act. And the Commission then would review and see whether the agreements could then be permitted, and parties are given authorization, which could be with conditions that those restrictive clauses are implemented if they are especially competitive in their nature, or they would bring about efficiencies in the economy. We would also be able to advise business entities out there to ensure that they abide with these conditions that the Commission would have given through its Board of Commissioners. Under Section 9, this is where I did earlier indicate that agreements under such a provision are per se prohibited. So these are what we call agreements that competitors would ideally come together and create some form of illusion that they are competing with each other, when in fact they are actually colluding to fix price, to fix the production supply chain, and a number of things. So in an event that this happens and the Commission investigates and find parties that would have entered into such agreements and colluded to fix price, to come up with some production quotas or limit markets, the there is no justification under the law. And so these are what the Directorate and ultimately the Commission would then be investigating. And once established and parties are found wanting, penalties of up to 10% would apply. This one is quite grave insofar as the Commission prohibited elements are concerned, because largely when entities decide to collude, you realize that they actually make an economy suffer, and largely also the customers out there in the market would suffer. And on the business side, you would realize that the people that are buying the services actually would also suffer. We have seen that the greatest loss are usually in such conducts would be government, especially where issues of constructions of maybe roads, construction of these social amenities that are needed, such as hospitals and many others. The price that may be cited for government or any procuring entity may be too high. So you would be thinking that the parties that have basically pushed in a bid to a tender are competing. There's price competition, when in fact there's no price competition, because what they have thrown out there as the cheapest might actually be very expensive, because they have been speaking behind doors. So these are part of what the Directorate and ultimately the Commission would then be able to be investigating. So I must also mention that when entities are found wanting, usually there is an avenue that is embedded in the law. Pardon me. There's an avenue that is embedded in the law where entities can then apply for leniency if they are found to have engaged in a cartel conduct. And they are also part of other processes and procedures that parties can be able to follow through with the Commission, such as the settlement procedure, and be able to settle if they are basically trying to avoid the full penalties. And these again are within the ambits of the law and are conducted within the ambits of the law. So for the leniency, it's important that parties that would have engaged in a restrictive conduct, especially those to do with cartel, they come and aid the Commission for them to get this leniency. And how do they aid the Commission? It is by providing the correct information, by providing information that is significant and information that is important to the extent that it will quicken the Commission's investigation process and is worthwhile insofar as investigating the cartel conduct is concerned. There is a test that the Commission would go through insofar as ensuring that what the evidence being submitted is concerned. So in that sense, we do not want parties that would come to waste the Commission's time. And so if we see that the information would not necessarily contribute to what we already have, the leniency may not be offered, but it's an avenue that entities would be able to deal with. I do know that my colleagues will speak much more further in detail on this. I am to provide the preamble of what the Directorate basically does. So in an event that an entity has also a significant market share and they want to enter into a restrictive agreement, again, the law does provide under Section 18 for application of exemptions. I must hasten to mention that again, the exemptions would not apply to conduct that is deemed per se, such as the cartel conduct and the retail price maintenance conduct, where the vertical agreement basically fixes a price in the downstream market, which is the vertical conduct, and the retail price maintenance. So the exemptions under Section 8 would under Section 18 would basically deal with non-per se offenses, where entities again should be able to justify And if the commission deems that whatever application the parties are making and the exemption thereof would bring about social and socio-economic benefits outweighing any detriment to the consumer and the competitive landscape to a larger extent, then such exemptions will be granted. But again, this has to have some form of scientific approach insofar as assessing the benefits that would accrue from such an exemption. And if the commission deems that granting the exemption would deteriorate the competitive landscape, these exemptions may not be granted. And so we also then have to engage a number of players when we are dealing with the applications that are made by entities out there. So the other facet that as the Directorate we do is, of course, we engage in compliance activities such as compliance training, trainings for business entities and associations out there. These again are important. You would note that sometimes it's important to have the business know about the law and be able to safeguard themselves, self-regulate so that they don't find themselves wanting. These trainings have proved to be fruitful, because then most of the entities would have their top management and their very, very bottom line staff to the point of the janitor, because it's important to have this information flow for any entity to be able to comply evidently. Some of the conducts that entities enter into are necessitated by not even the senior people, but the very least people they would expect in their organogram or in their structure. And this could be maybe just the receptionist without knowing that they're exchanging information, or they're being used to exchange information by maybe some middle management people. And so that's why these compliance training programs are important. And that is why we always insist that the trainees are in all the categories of the structure of any enterprise. And in terms of other matters that the Directorate would deal with, we also have to basically undertake market surveillances. We do market surveillances, but we also conduct awareness activities in joint collaboration with our other departmental colleagues from the Commission. And so these are also again fruitful insofar as ensuring that the competitive landscape is even. These awareness programs are also important in the sense that they then prepare enterprises to be able to be proactive insofar as ensuring that they do not come into conflict with the law. What we have noticed also is that when we do these awarenesses, they have been part of the mechanisms that have necessitated some form of semblance in the market space, where you now see that compliance levels in the market as a result of entities being aware in the existence of the law has improved. So we are basically trying to also have certain activities that would include not just the association, rather the businesses now, but the associations. Previously we did note that as we were enforcing the law, we noticed that certain prohibitions were being largely engaged in by certain trade associations, and we noticed that they were not necessarily being captured. So with the amendment of the law, specifically with Section 8 to include associations, we have also made sure that our sensitization, whereas our enforcement with the law, as explicit as it is, our awareness and compliance is also targeting associations now. This is important for us as a directorate and ultimately as a commission to be able to ensure that everyone is on board and everyone is captured by the law insofar as their conduct is concerned, and where necessary, the awareness targets and is much more focused to target the entities on the do's and don'ts. We also have to indicate here that as a directorate, we provide guidance to businesses. So the businesses out there should not only engage the commission at the point where there's an investigation and stuff, they are free to actually come through, and from the Directorate of Restrictive Business Practices, we will be able to actually provide the guidance and advice insofar as entering into agreements is concerned. We would review the agreements that entities want to enter into and provide guidance. We would also be able to just advise the businesses in terms of how they can then operate when they want to relate with competitors. Relating with competitors is not prohibited. What is prohibited is that during the course of relating with the competitors, you start exchanging key strategic information such as your pricing models, your production models, and basically then we start seeing some form of symmetrical application of your trading arrangements. So that way, the commission then would definitely frown upon such. In a nutshell, this is what we thought we could highlight from the Directorate of Restrictive Business Practices. I would encourage the viewers out there to look out for the specific episodes on the topics that I've briefly touched on regarding cartel conduct, regarding which are horizontal agreements and also the vertical agreements, and also look out for matters related to exemptions as well as any other agreements. But also, interestingly, for the businesses out there, be mindful whenever you engage in a conduct that you can still approach the commission. We have the leniency procedure and the settlement procedure that is there for the businesses. We continue to encourage everyone to participate in the competition landscape, because ultimately a competitive market means that there would be efficiencies. It also means that you will have quality products to benefit the patronage that the businesses are seeking out there, which is the patronage of customers. And ultimately, we would all benefit the economy of Zambia. Thank you.